In the history of medicine, Islamic medicine, also known as Arabic, Greco-Arabic, or Greco-Islamic medicine, refers to the science of medicine developed in the Islamic Golden Age, and written in Arabic, the lingua franca of Islamic civilization. Beginning in the 7th century, Islam spread to a large part of the then-known world. Under the rule of the Islamic caliphs, people of various ethnic origins and religious beliefs lived together. Their common language of communication was Arabic, and the culture they created is called Islamic culture, even if it included Muslims, Jews, Christians and other religions alike. Under the rule of Islam, the Islamic medicine has faithfully preserved, systematized and further developed the medical knowledge of the classical antiquity. During the post-classical era, Islamic medicine was the most advanced in the world, integrating concepts of the ancient Greek, Roman, Persian as well as the ancient Indian traditions of Ayurveda. At the same time, the knowledge of the classical medicine was nearly lost to the medieval medicine of Western Europe, only to be regained by European physicians when they became familiar with Islamic medical authors during the Renaissance of the 12th century. The medieval Islamic physicians largely retained their authority until the rise of medicine as a part of the natural sciences. Beginning with the Age of Enlightenment, nearly 600 years after their textbooks were written, many aspects of their writings are still worth reading even today, and their memory is held in high respect by the physicians of today. Overview. Medicine was a central part of medieval Islamic culture. Responding to circumstances of time and place, Islamic physicians and scholars developed a large and complex medical literature exploring, analyzing, and synthesizing the theory and practice of medicine. Islamic medicine was initially built on tradition, chiefly the theoretical and practical knowledge developed in Arabia and was known at Muhammad's time. Ancient Hellenistic medicine such as Unana, ancient Indian medicine such as Ayurveda, and the ancient Iranian medicine of the Academy of Gundishapa. The works of ancient Greek and Roman physicians Hippocrates, Galen and Dioscorides also had a lasting impact on Islamic medicine. Ophthalmology has been described as the most successful branch of medicine researched at the time, with the works of Ibn al-Haytham remaining an authority in the field until early modern times. Origins and sources. Ibn Nabawi, Prophetic medicine. The adoption by the newly forming Islamic society of the medical knowledge of the surrounding, or newly conquered, heathen civilizations had to be justified as being in accordance with the beliefs of Islam. Early on, the study and practice of medicine was understood as an act of piety, founded on the principles of Iman and Tawakkul. The Prophet not only instructed sick people to take medicine, but he himself invited expert physicians for this purpose. As Suyuti's Medicine of the Prophet p. 125, Muhammad's opinions on health issues, and habits with regard to leading a healthy life, were collected early on, and edited as a separate corpus of writings under the title Ibn Nabi. In the 14th century, Ibn Khaldun, in his work Muqaddimah, provides a brief overview over what he called the art and craft of medicine, separating the science of medicine from religion. You'll have to know that the origin of all maladies goes back to nutrition, as the Prophet, God bless him, says with regard to the entire medical tradition, as commonly known by all physicians, even if this is contested by the religious scholars. These are his words. The stomach is the house of illness, and abstinence is the most important medicine. The cause of every illness is a poor digestion. Ibn Khaldun, Muqaddimah, v. 18. The Sahih al-Bukhari, a collection of prophetic traditions, or hadith by Muhammad al-Bukhari, refers to a collection of Muhammad's opinions on medicine, by his younger contemporary Anas bin Malik. Anas writes about two physicians who had treated him by cauterization and mentions that the Prophet wanted to avoid this treatment and had asked for alternative treatments. Later on, there are reports of the Caliph Uthman ibn Affan fixing his teeth with a wire made of gold. He also mentions that the habit of cleaning one's teeth with a small wooden toothpick dates back to pre-Islamic times. The prophetic medicine was rarely mentioned by the classical authors of Islamic medicine, but lived on in the Materia Medica for some centuries. In his Kitab as-Sidana from the 10th–11th century, al-Biruni refers to collected poems and other works dealing with, and commenting on, the Materia Medica of the old Arabs. The most famous physician was Al-Arit ben Khalad at-Takafi, who lived at the same time as the Prophet. He is supposed to have been in touch with the Academy of Gondishibha, perhaps he was even trained there. He reportedly had a conversation once with Khosrau Nushirvan about medical topics. Physicians during the early years of Islam. Most likely, the Arabian physicians became familiar with the Greco-Roman and late Hellenistic medicine through direct contact with physicians who were practicing in the newly conquered regions rather than by reading the original or translated works. The translation of the capital of the emerging Islamic world to Damascus may have facilitated this contact, as Syrian medicine was part of that ancient tradition. The names of two Christian physicians are known. Ibn Attal worked at the court of Muawiyah I, the founder of the Umayyad dynasty. The caliph abused his knowledge in order to get rid of some of his enemies by way of poisoning. Likewise, Abu al-Hakam, who was responsible for the preparation of drugs, was employed by Muawiyah. His son, grandson, and great-grandson were also serving the Umayyad and Abbasid Caliphate. These sources testify to the fact that the physicians of the emerging Islamic society were familiar with the classical medical traditions already at the times of the Umayyads. The medical knowledge likely arrived from Alexandria, and was probably transferred by Syrian scholars, or translators, finding its way into the Islamic world. 7th–9th century. The adoption of earlier traditions. Very few sources provide information about how the expanding Islamic society received any medical knowledge. A physician called Abdu Malik ben Abgar al-Kanana from Kufa in Iraq is supposed to have worked at the medical school of Alexandria before he joined Umar ibn Abdulaziz's court. Umar transferred the medical school from Alexandria to Antioch. It is also known that members of the Academy of Gondishapur traveled to Damascus. The Academy of Gondishapur remained active throughout the time of the Abbasid Caliphate, though. An important source from the second half of the 8th century is Jabir ibn Hayyan's Book of Poisons. He only cites earlier works in Arabic translations, as were available to him, including Hippocrates, Plato, Galen, Pythagoras and Aristotle, and also mentions the Persian names of some drugs and medical plants. In 825, the Abbasid Caliph al-Ma'mun founded the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, modeled after the Academy of Gondishapur, led by the Christian physician Hunayn ibn Ishaq, and with support by Byzance. All available works from the antique world were translated, including Galen, Hippocrates, Plato, Aristotle, Ptolemy and Archimedes. It is currently understood that the early Islamic medicine was mainly informed directly from Greek sources from the Academy of Alexandria. Translated into the Arabic language, the influence of the Persian medical tradition seems to be limited to the Materia Medica, although the Persian physicians were familiar with the Greek sources as well. Ancient Greek, Roman, and late Hellenistic medical literature. Ancient Greek and Roman texts. Various translations of some works and compilations of ancient medical texts are known from the 7th century. Hunayn ibn Ishaq, the leader of a team of translators at the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, played a key role with regard to the translation of the entire known corpus of classical medical literature. Caliph al-Ma'mun had sent envoys to the Byzantine Emperor Theophilos, asking him to provide whatever classical texts he had available. Thus, the great medical texts of Hippocrates and Galen were translated into Arabian, as well as works of Pythagoras, Acron of Agrigent, Democritus, Polybos, Diogenes of Apollonia, medical works attributed to Plato, Aristotle, Nasidius of Athens, Xenocrates, Pedanius Dioscorides, Crichton, Soranus of Ephesus, Archigenes, Antyllus, Rufus of Ephesus were translated from the original texts. Other works including those of Erasistratus were known by their citations in Galen's works. Late Hellenistic texts, the works of Oribasius, physician to the Roman Emperor Julian, from the 4th century AD, were well known, and were frequently cited in detail by Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi. The works of Philagrius of Epirus, who also lived in the 4th century AD, are only known today from quotations by Arabic authors. The philosopher and physician John the Grammarian, who lived in the 6th century AD, was attributed the role of a commentator on the Summaria Alexandrinorum. This is a compilation of 16 books by Galen, but corrupted by superstitious ideas. The physicians Gesios of Petra and Palladios were equally known to the Arabic physicians as authors of the Summaria. Rhazes cites the Roman physician Alexander of Tralles in order to support his criticism of Galen. The works of Aetius of Amida were only known in later times, as they were neither cited by Rhazes nor by Ibn al-Nadim, but cited first by al-Biruni in his Kitab as-Sidana, and translated by Ibn al-Hamma in the 10th century. One of the very first books which were translated from Greek into Syrian, and then into Arabic during the time of the 4th Umayyad Caliph Marwan I by the Jewish scholar Masagawi al-Bashri was the medical compilation, Kunas, by Aaron, who lived during the 6th century. Later on, Hunayn ibn Ishaq has provided a better translation. The physician Paul of Aegina lived in Alexandria during the time of the Arab expansion. His works seem to have been used as an important reference by the early Islamic physicians, and were frequently cited from Rhazes up to Avicenna. Paul of Aegina provides a direct connection between the late Hellenistic and the early Islamic medical science. Arabic translations of Hippocrates. The early Islamic physicians were familiar with the life of Hippocrates, and were aware of the fact that his biography was in part a legend. Also, they knew that several persons lived who were called Hippocrates, and their works were compiled under one single name. Ibn Nadim has conveyed a short treatise by Tabat Ben-Kura on al-Bukhari Hippocrates. Translations of some of Hippocrates' works must have existed before Hunayn ibn Ishaq started his translations, because the historian al-Yaqubi compiled a list of the works known to him in 872. Fortunately, his list also supplies a summary of the content, quotations, or even the entire text of the single works. The philosopher al-Kindi wrote a book with the title At-Tib al-Bukhari, and his contemporary Hunayn ibn Ishaq then translated Galen's commentary on Hippocrates. Rhazes is the first Arabic writing physician who makes thorough use of Hippocrates' writings in order to set up his own medical system. Al-Tabari maintained that his compilation of Hippocratic teachings was a more appropriate summary. The work of Hippocrates was cited and commented on during the entire period of medieval Islamic medicine. Arabic translations of Galen. Galen is one of the most famous scholars and physicians of the classical antiquity. Today, the original texts of some of his works, and details of his biography, are lost, and are only known to us because they were translated into Arabic. Jabir ibn Hayyan frequently cites Galen's books, which were available in early Arabic translations. In 872 AD, Yaquba refers to some of Galen's works. The titles of the books he mentions differ from those chosen by Hunayn ibn Ishaq for his own translations, thus suggesting earlier translations must have existed. Hunayn frequently mentions in his comments to works which he had translated that he considered earlier translations as insufficient, and had provided completely new translations. Early translations might have been available before the 8th century, most likely they were translated from Syrian or Persian language. Within the medieval Islamic medicine, Hunayn ibn Ishaq and his younger contemporary Tabat Ben-Kura play an important role as translators and commentators of Galen's work. They also try to compile and summarize a consistent medical system from these works, and add this to the medical science of their period. However, starting already with Jabir ibn Hayyan in the 8th century, and even more pronounced in Ruzas's treatise on vision, criticism of Galen's ideas took on. In the 10th century, the physician, Ali ibn al-Abbas al-Majasi wrote, "With regard to the great and extraordinary Galen, he has written numerous works, each of which only comprises a section of the science. There are lengthy passages, and redundancies of thoughts and proofs, throughout his works. None of them I'm able to regard as being comprehensive." Al-Majasi, 10th century Syrian and Persian medical literature. Syrian texts during the 10th century. Ibn Washir compiled writings by the Nabateans, including also medical information. The Syrian scholar Sergius of Reshana translated various works by Hippocrates and Galen, of whom parts 6 to 8 of a pharmacological book, and fragments of 2 other books have been preserved. Hunayn ibn Ishaq has translated these works into Arabic. Another work, still existing today, by an unknown Syrian author, likely has influenced the Arabic writing physicians Al-Tabari and Yuhanna ibn Masawai. The earliest known translation from the Syrian language is the Kunnus of the scholar Aaron, which was translated into the Arabian by Masawai al-Bashri in the 7th century. Syrian physicians also played an important role at the Academy of Gondishapur. Their names were preserved because they worked at the court of the Abbasid caliphs. Persian texts. Again, the Academy of Gondishapur played an important role, guiding the transmission of Persian medical knowledge to the Arabic physicians. Founded, according to Gregorius Bahabraeus, by the Sassanid ruler Shapur I during the 3rd century AD. The Academy contacted the ancient Greek and Indian medical traditions. Arabian physicians trained in Gondishapur may have established contacts with the early Islamic medicine. The treatise Abd al-Adwiyah by the Christian physician Masawai is of some importance, as the opening sentence of his work is, "These are the medications which were taught by Greek, Indian, and Persian physicians." Masawai, Abd al-Adwiyah in his work Firdaus al-Hikmah, al-Tabari uses only a few Persian medical terms, especially when mentioning specific diseases, but a large number of drugs and medicinal herbs are mentioned using their Persian names, which have also entered the medical language of Islamic medicine. As well as al-Tabari, Razes rarely uses Persian terms, and only refers to 2 Persian works, Kunnus Farizi and Al-Filaha al-Farisiya. Indian medical literature. Indian scientific works, e.g., on astronomy, were already translated by Yaqub ibn Ariq and Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Fazari during the times of the Abbasid Caliph al-Mansur. Under Harun al-Rashid, at latest, the first translations were performed of Indian works about medicine and pharmacology. In one chapter on Indian medicine, Ibn al-Nadim mentions the names of 3 of the translators, Manka ibn Dan, and Abdullah ibn Ali. Yuhanna ibn Masawai cites an Indian textbook in his treatise on ophthalmology. At-Tabari devotes the last 36 chapters of his Firdaus al-Hikmah to describe the Indian medicine, citing Sushruta, Karakar, and the Ashtanga Hridaya. One of the most important books on Ayurveda, translated between 773 and 808 by Ibn Dan. Razes cites in Al-Hura and in Kitab al-Manshuri both Sushruta and Karakar besides other authors unknown to him by name, whose works he cites is Min Kitab al-Hind, an Indian book. Meyerhoff suggested that the Indian medicine, like the Persian medicine, has mainly influenced the Arabic materia medica, because there is frequent reference to Indian names of herbal medicines and drugs, which were unknown to the Greek medical tradition. While Syrian physicians transmitted the medical knowledge of the ancient Greeks, most likely Persian physicians, probably from the Academy of Gondishapur, were the first intermediates between the Indian and the Arabic medicine in the 11th century. Al-Biruni, who also wrote a history of India, wrote in his Kitab as-Saydana, "In the East, there is no country whose people are devoted to science except the Indians, but especially these disciplines, i.e., medicine, are based on principles which are opposed to the rules which we peoples of the West are used to. Besides, our being opposed to them in terms of language, religion, manners and habits, as well as their unduly anxiousness with regard to purity and impurity, annihilates any convergence, and cuts off any means of discussion.